video is all about another commonly asked question, which is how can I find the right pointe shoe for me? It's really like a common question. I mean, everybody who starts pointe or has been on pointe for a while asks this question. Now, it can vary. You know, some dancers are quite lucky. They'll get their first pair of pointe shoes and that will be the same style, brand, whatever shoe that they stay with for the rest of their dancing careers, life, whatever. But other dancers like myself find it takes quite a while to find the right shoe for them. Now, for me personally, it took me about 2 years before I found the right pointe shoe. Now, it's quite a troublesome time because you do spend a lot of money, you spend a lot of time too, and you may go through a variety of injuries due to the wrong shoe. Now, just because someone's a pointe shoe fitter or just because a shop says that they can do pointe shoe fitting doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to fit you with the correct shoe, and neither does it mean that, you know, you're going to continue to get the right shoes if you've got a good fitter. It's all about, well, a variety of things really. It also depends on you, like, you know, your flexibility, your strength. You know, feet do change throughout your life. Plus, you've got to think about things like your technique, for example, and the fact that as years go by, your feet are going to get stronger. You may develop injuries, you may get bunions, you may get certain blisters in areas, you may get toenail problems. There's various factors really about how it's going to contribute to you getting the right shoe. You also want to think about the fact that just because you might be in the right shoe now doesn't mean that that shoe's going to be right for you forever. You might be lucky, you might have found the shoe already and, you know, years down the line it still works for you, which is great. But you've got to realise that it's important that you go for fittings quite often. Try to go for every pair of shoes you get. Now, if you can't manage that, try to go, I'd say at least like once every 6 months or so, because you will be surprised at things that can change about your feet and technique, and maybe things that you haven't realised before. Try to go to a fitter that is experienced, obviously that's quite key, and somebody who is recommended. Sometimes shops, like, you know, you can go to cities or towns where there's certain shops that might have a good reputation, but sometimes you may get the wrong fitter in there, someone who doesn't really have a great deal of experience, or someone who just wants to make money out of you, which is not ideal. I myself have spent a lot of money over the years on shoes and it's been really frustrating. I know how you feel if you're still looking for the right shoe for you. It is an incredibly frustrating time. But don't worry, keep carrying on, and if possible, if you're having problems, say, finding a dance shop near to you, maybe email a fitter who could help you out a little. Bear in mind, if you order shoes online, it's a bad idea because every brand and every style fits a lot different to another. So what you might be in one size, width and shank in one shoe, you might not be in another shoe. So do bear that in mind. It really isn't worth the waste of time ordering online unless you absolutely know what size, width and shank and whatever else you're going to be in that shoe. As you can see, I've got some shoes behind me. Now, I only fit Grishko, and some people say to me that they've been in shops and they've tried on Grishko and they haven't found a Grishko for them, or they don't like Grishkos. Now, the reason for this is a lot of shops tend to only stock a couple of models, or they only stock one model, which is the 2007, which is this shoe here. The reason they stock this shoe is because it is one of the top selling shoes and it tends to fit a variety of feet. But personally, I feel not everyone, well, it's common fact actually, that not everyone is going to get on with the 2007. The 2007 is a tapered shoe, which means the box is tapered in style and shape. The vamp is quite long, I'd say, and it's also a low profile shoe, which means the profile height of the shoe here. Now, think of it this way: if that's got a low profile height, then it means it's only suitable for low profile feet. And yeah, there are a lot of people with low profile feet, but personally I tend to encounter quite a lot of people with higher profile feet that can't get on with this shoe. That's why I like to stock a wide variety of Grishkos and give them the option to try other Grishkos I may not have. It's really important, and a lot of people aren't educated about Grishko enough. You know, they go in a shop and they'll just see a 2007, maybe a Triumph, and they think that's all they've got, but the fitter or the person in the shop fails to tell them that there are other styles available. So it's, you know, a lot of people just aren't being informed, which is really sad, because Grishko do have so many styles, and you know, you can custom order. The possibilities are endless. And personally for me, I have never yet encountered a dancer that I could not fit in a perfect shoe in a Grishko. I've never seen it before. Never have I, you know, fitted a dancer where I thought, no, she's going to be in a different brand. There really is a Grishko to suit everybody, in my opinion. So do bear that in mind if you fancy trying a Grishko. Now, let's get down to the basics about what makes a perfect fit. You'll go in a shop, say if you're first fitting, it will be very daunting. Most likely they won't tell you the important factors about what they're looking for a perfect fit, or what they're looking for a first shoe, or maybe you're experienced and you go, and again they just don't tell you this information. There is a basic recipe to finding the right pointe shoe. The way I look at it myself is, I look at someone's feet, I determine whether they've got, you know, what foot shape they've got first of all, because everybody has a different foot shape. There's the common ones, you know, people sometimes have tapered toes, so where the big toe is the largest toe, and then they start to taper down. Some people will have a semi-tapered configuration, some will be more square, some people might have a second toe that is longer, some people might have kind of like, you know, they might have bunions, they might have tailor's bunions. There's many different factors about the foot, so I always look at the foot shape. When I was looking for my perfect pointe shoe, at the time I wasn't like a pointe shoe fitter then, but this is how I learned a lot about feet, because I did so much research and I tried so many brands and styles, and this is how I began to figure out so much about pointe shoes themselves. So you want to think firstly about your foot type. Look at your feet, look at your toes, look at how wide your foot is. Have you got compressible feet? Now, the way to determine that is basically squeeze around your kind of forefoot. If it's quite squishy, especially if you're in a pointe shoe and you notice a change in the width of the foot, it's likely that you've got a compressible foot. That means that it will appear wider on the flat, but when it's on point, it will become more kind of narrow. I myself have this problem. And it can be frustrating, because it means that basically you need to have a shoe that is going to hug you tightly around here. But on the flat, a lot of people, especially fitters, will look at your feet and think, oh, she's like, you know, that kind of width. But then they get the dancer on point and the dancer will say that they're sinking in the shoe. But the fitter will think, no, you're fine, because they don't realise that this dancer has got a compressible foot. So that's another thing to take into consideration. The next thing you think about is also, of course, if you're new to pointe or if you're more advanced, what you want most out of a shoe. Now, if you've been wearing pointe shoes for a while, you'll kind of know what you're looking for in terms of strength, or what you like about a pointe shoe and what you don't like. A good thing to do is to write down, keep in a little book or on your like computer, a spreadsheet or something like that. I personally have a spreadsheet for myself, and I write down every pair of pointe shoes I've had. I note down the brand, the style, the size, the width, the shank strength, and any other little bits that make a difference to how I'm going to look back on it and think about what, you know, was working for that shoe and what wasn't. I also write down the date of purchase, and I write down, after a while of wearing them, what I thought about the shoe and what I didn't like about the shoe. So make 2 columns perhaps about pros and cons, so you can write down the facts about the shoe that you liked and what you didn't like. This is a really good tip, because it's going to help you later down the line deciding what pointe shoes you want to go for, and it also helps you remember, because it's very easy to forget what shoe you've been in. For example, you know, once you've worn a pointe shoe down, the sticker may come off, you may not remember the style, and it may became like really misshapen through wear, and you might not remember what you've had, and also the size and width may wear off, and the shank strength, so you may think, oh, I don't know what I had. So do keep details down about what shoes you've had. That way you can also see how long a pointe shoe has typically last you. So, you know, a pointe shoe may last you a month, it may last you a little while longer, maybe even a shorter space of time depending on the brand, style, shank, what kind of work you was doing in that shoe. So once you've decided what foot type you are, looked at your toes, you want to see about your toe length. That's very important too, because if you've got short toes, you're going to typically need a shorter vamp. The vamp is this part here. You're going to need a vamp height that is shorter so it doesn't restrict you when you're on point or when you're rolling through the shoe. Next up, you want to think about your arch. If you've got quite a flat foot, you're going to need a softer shank. If you put a flat foot in quite a strong shank, you're very unlikely to break the shoe in, and you're also going to be held back off the platform when you're on point. So make sure that you take into consideration your arch. If you've got like an average medium arch, then typically you're going to need an average standard shank, medium shank. Depending on your instep and other factors, you should be able to get away with medium shank. That should be fine. Now, if you've got a high arch, that's quite different. You will need either a harder shank, or you may need a 3/4 or a half shank, or you may need a softer shoe. It kind of depends what you fancy, and it kind of depends how your foot works. Because despite having a higher arch, most people say put them in a stronger shank. It's not always the case. Sometimes you need to go a bit softer in the shoe and a 3/4 shank to enable that you're not going to snap the shanks like I spoke about in another video. Next up, you want to consider how often you're going to be wearing your pointe shoes too. Are you going to be wearing them just for half an hour once a week? Or are you going to be wearing them every day? You know, some dancers have who are just hobbyists, just do half an hour a week. Some people, especially like the pre-professionals and of course the professionals, are pretty much on point like 5 days, 6 days a week. So if you're going to be wearing your pointe shoes a lot, then you do need to be rotating shoes. Rotating shoes means buying a few pairs at once and wearing a different pair each day or throughout the day, so that they're getting enough time to air out, to dry fully, to extend their life. It really does help a lot. Another factor is, of course, what your teacher thinks about your technique and your strength. What is she may be considered. She may tell you that you need a softer shoe or a harder shoe. Your teacher will be able to tell you a lot regarding your technique, so always consider talking to your teacher as well. Another common thing, I'm just trying to think of other things now. Oh, you want to think about the shape of the shoe in general, and also drawstring too. Are you going to need a drawstring? Can you live without a drawstring? Some brands of pointe shoe do come as standard without drawstring, but not all dancers can wear those because they have quite a slim foot. They tend to get baggying, or it just isn't working. Now, width is another common problem. Make sure you get the right width, because of course as the shoe breaks in, it molds to your foot more and it will become a bit wider, so always get the correct width. The width is quite a tricky one sometimes, because you may think that you need wider than you need at the fitting, so then when you actually break in the shoe it ends up becoming too wide, and that's why you're getting a lot of pain and sliding in the shoe. Another thing that you shouldn't be afraid to do is to try on loads of different shoes that you're fitting. Really make sure that your fitter takes time to go through a variety of styles. Make sure that you actually go on point in them. Now, some fitters prefer to have you sitting down, and they'll make you just sit down for the whole fitting, and they'll basically pop your foot onto point and like cross it over the other foot, if that makes sense, to feel how the shank is sitting on your foot and stuff. Personally, for me, I like to get dancers to actually go on point. So I have a bar there, or you know, back of a chair or something like that, and I make sure the dancer actually goes on point in parallel, and sometimes first position too. You want to make sure that you try all the factors. So you want to make sure that you're standing in a second position on the flat, and you do a demi-plie to see if your big toe is touching the end. All these little factors that make sure you're going to get a correct fit. So I would say those are basically the most important factors in choosing the right shoe for you, is thinking about your own feet, your technique, your strength. And it can be very overwhelming with the different brands and styles. So perhaps do a little bit of research online and make a list of what you want to try. And if that's a bit much, then maybe just, you know, find a fitter who knows their stuff basically. Not one that wants to make a quick sale out of you and doesn't really care about you getting the right shoe or not. Remember that although you may get the right shoe for you at the time, it might feel great. When you get home, it might feel a bit different. Don't be afraid to tell your fitter that you want to take the shoes back for an exchange. As long as they're in clean condition, they're not sewn, you know, they're not broken in or anything like that, then they'll be happy for you to exchange them for another pair. Always get your teacher, especially if you're quite a new student to pointe, to look at your shoes and see them on you before you sew the ribbons. That's a really important thing to do, because there's nothing worse than if you've got a shoe that you think's fine, the fitter thinks it's fine, but then your teacher sees it, you've already sewn it, and she already writes it off as a no-go, because once the ribbons are sewn, that's it. You're going to have to, like, basically, if they're not broken in, try to sell them on eBay or something. But most of the time, you're basically stuck with the shoes and you've wasted money. So I can't stress that enough. Another factor is thinking about if you're using the shoes for performance, when you need them for performance. So if you're, say, like, got a performance within 2 weeks' time and you need new shoes, then the sooner you get a pair of Pointe shoes, a new pair of Pointe shoes, the better it's going to be, because then you have enough time to break them in and get them stage ready. But just be assured that, you know, you do need to make sure that you aren't wearing them a lot before the performance, because they might be more liable to break. So if you know you've got a performance coming up or an exam or whatever, make sure that you've got your shoes ready to go. I've seen times where dancers have contacted me and they need shoes urgently and I haven't got them in stock, or they can't get them in stock. They can't get them from anywhere because they're basically sold out. So make sure you've got enough of the shoe that you're happy in, all ready to go, basically, because there's nothing worse than, you know, get to that point where you've realised that your shoes are broken and you've got no backups. So that is really important. So yeah, finding the right Pointe shoe is going to take a bit of time. You might be lucky, your first pair might be the golden pair, it might be the pair for you forever. Of course, like, making sure you update your shoes, so getting, like, fresh pairs, because obviously Pointe shoes break. But apart from that, if you're unlucky, you might be stuck. It might take you a few years. For me, it's got to the point where I had to find a style I liked, but then get them custom ordered, because I've got very short toes, so I needed a shorter vamp. So that's why, for me, I wear a Grishko Maya 1, sorry, not the second one, which is this one here. With my personal custom order, I have the vamp shortened because of my short toes. I have worn the Maya 1 off the peg, so to speak, but it is too long in the vamp for me. I have the shank customised. I usually go for easy roll through, so I can get my demi Pointe easy, and I go for typically a super soft or a soft shank, sometimes a Pro Flex, but very rarely a Pro Flex now. I have sometimes the side quarters shortened a little. What else? Oh yes, I also have the platform widened a little. I also go for my favourite maker, which is maker number 18. And can't remember what else I have done to my order, actually. Sometimes I have the drawstring, sometimes I don't. But, you know, if you get to that stage where you need a custom order, then so be it. But it will be worthwhile. It's worth the extra money. It's worth having a shoe that fits you correctly, looks beautiful, supports you right, and is going to, you know, make you feel comfortable, not have to worry about the shoe, rather than thinking of saving money and going for a shoe that isn't quite right, because at the end of the day, you are on your toes. I mean, you want to make sure you're in the correct shoe. I can't really stress that enough. Don't, you know, don't think, oh, you know, I'd rather spend my money on something else, rather go out of my money or whatever. It's worth putting money aside and going for the correct shoe. If you need any help with Grishkos, or any other Pointe shoe for that matter, feel free to drop me an email and I'll do my best to help you. I do Pointe shoe fitting. I'm a Grishko Stockist, so if you need any help with, you know, acquiring certain Grishkos, feel free to drop me a mail as well. I'm based in Essex and London. I can travel all over. You can also check out my Facebook page. The link's just below. I hope this video has solved, you know, questions about getting your perfect Pointe shoe. But, you know, if you do have any questions that I've missed out, just feel free to drop me around. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks for watching, and please subscribe to my channel. Bye!